Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie and I'm going to talk about my goals for next year. I figured now would be a good time to film that video. I might do a part 3 to my autumn going into winter TBR. I don't know. I feel like I didn't like part 2 how I did it. I mean, I'm thinking about deleting it and refilming it. I don't know. It's still a bit of trying to, I don't know. I might keep it. I don't know. But, I think I'm going to do a part 3 of that, make it more organized and less sloppy looking. Because I feel like that one, it was more, I was just deciding, I was, feeling the need to film that video that night, and but anyway, for now I'm going to talk about my goals for 2022. So, first of all, I've come to a conclusion that the 150 book goal was just too much. I could not do it. I tried to do it because I like the idea of the challenge and trying to meet the challenge and seeing if I could do it. Obviously I can't, and I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me or anything. It's, disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. Maybe I'll try again, maybe I won't. So I'm going to go for a much lower goal in 2022. I'm thinking around the number 12. 12 books for my Goodreads / graph goal. I'm also going to do the word count goal as well. I like doing that. And just for the record, it's fun. I kind of like doing this. And, I remember earlier this year reading a comment somewhere about how they didn't like people that keep track of how many books they read, and how, because it shouldn't be about quantity. And for me personally, that's not what it's about. It's about the challenge. It's about the motivation. It's fun to do that. And I don't think we should judge anyone just because of how they read their books. You can think privately, and judging people is inevitable. I think people just can't help it. But, it's human nature. But I don't think we should obviously put it out there that we're like saying, oh, how dare you count how many books you read, or you prioritize that, because that does not mean you're putting quantity over quality. Maybe there are people like that are just focusing on how, that are just like, thinking more about the numbers. And besides with, like, in school, sometimes you have to keep sure you have to get through books a little quicker, and I think it's also partly to do with the fact that and I know this is for me, that it's not about quantity, it's about trying. There's so many books you want to read that you feel overwhelmed, and you feel like, oh, I gotta read this one and this one, which I've said that a million times before, how that's my problem, why I ended up making a 2-part TBR, trying to choose my TBR, and I still haven't even settled on a TBR. And I almost think, I think because I put the video out there, I almost feel obligated to stick to that method, but then another part of me is like, what, I should just pick in the moment, like the night before or the day before, pick my TBR. But it's like, I also am someone who likes to plan. I like making lists, like a lot of people on BookTube, I've noticed. I like organizing it. I like to write down what I'm gonna read, and it's kind of fun to do that, but at the same time, it's also very stressful. And I know a lot of people tell me, don't put any stress, it's just reading, you're not on a deadline, you're not being graded for this. But I definitely, but I think because people feel like people are constantly either borrowing or buying books, and they feel like, oh, I gotta get to this book next, I gotta get to this one. That you end up, so it's not necessarily that you're prioritizing the quantity of books, it's just more that you can't, you can't figure out what books to focus on. And also feeling like, and for me, I'm also feeling like I'm feeling guilty because there's books that have been sitting on my shelf for a long time. There's books that people bought for me a few years ago or a year ago that I feel like I haven't started reading yet. And I have people in my life like that give me a hard time. Basically, my parents giving me concerned about my spending habits. And it's like, when I was a little bit younger, I remember my dad saying to me, you don't need to buy a book every time you go to the bookstore. It's impossible for me to just browse. I mean, unless there's just nothing whatsoever that I'm interested. Like, today, my mom and I went to a consignment shop because she was dropping off these Christmas clocks that she didn't need anymore. And and there was a couple shelves with books, but it was like, first of all, it was a lot of hardbacks and mass markets, and it was books that I just wasn't interested in, so that I was able to resist. I had already just bought 2 books from, my mom took me to Books A Million, so I just bought 2 books from there. So yeah, I won't, if there's nothing there whatsoever, if I can't find anything, nothing that I'm the least bit interested in, then yeah, I won't. But that's on a rare occasion. That does not happen that often. But and my other biggest problem, why I'm going to make this a smaller goal, is because, again, it's not the quantity, it's the fact that I end up neglecting the bigger books that I have that I know are going to take me a lot more time and a lot more of commitment. And I have so many of them that I want to read, so it's like, well, I should read the book that I can get done a little faster. So it's just, I'm trying to, I mean, this might not really help me because I might still feel like I have like 30 to 31 days, or in the case of February, 29 days, and so I want to get these books read in that, I guess I do get a little competitive. And I'm thinking about all those people that can... Now, I'm not going crazy about it and being, but I do in the back of my mind, I think, about how many books other people have read, and I'm like, wow, I can't do that. I mean, like I said, it's a loose competitiveness, because in this case, because it's not like I'm putting in a whole lot of effort to read, like, over 10 books or over 20 books. I mean, I do feel proud when I do get over that number, and I don't think there's anything wrong, and there's nothing wrong with that, feeling proud that you've read a lot of books. Just as long as you're enjoying yourself and appreciating them and not just zipping through them, which, I don't do that. I don't just zip through my books. I mean, like, there are some books I've gotten through quicker, but it's not because I've speed read them or just skimmed through them or something. But anyway, I'm just gonna try to make sure I have a 12-book goal on Goodreads and then 12 books on Storygraph, and just try to fit in some of those bigger books, and some of them, and I want to, relax a little bit with my reading. Except I'm not, Okay, so next, I want to continue to get into audiobooks more. I keep debating, but because I have an iPhone, I do have an audiobook reader on my phone that comes with it, and I keep wanting to, but like, I have the audiobook reader, but the book, it's not free. I mean, I still have to pay for the books. And, I keep debating about buying this one book, this version of David Copperfield, read by Richard Armitage, who, if you don't know, he is Thorin Oakenshield in the Hobbit movies. I know a lot of people do not love those movies because they made them a trilogy, and the CGI is apparently bad and all that kind of stuff. But I love them, and I still love the actor, Richard Armitage, and Martin Freeman, too. So he's also, if you're a classics reader and you watch all the adaptations of classics, he was also played John Thornton in the miniseries adaptation from, I think it was 2004 is when it came out, of North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. And I think he's done a few other things, like he was in the Female Oceans, I think it's 8, the female version of it, which I wonder if that's one of the ones that people, where they gender swap and it did well, because I was recently watching a video where they mentioned how gender swaps don't always work, and sometimes they do, as long as you can do it well. I mean, I enjoyed that movie, but of course I also thought I enjoyed the female Ghostbusters movie too. But I can see what people say about, at least what my dad says about this. Seems like they're trying too hard to be like to be a copy of the original, Ghostbusters and Oceans 8. I think it did its own thing, but I'm not an expert on that. So, but anyway. But yeah, he was also in that movie as well as the love interest for one of the women, and and then I think he did one of those disaster movies. I can't remember which one. But anyway, yeah, he narrates David Copperfield, but it's an audible thing. You can get it from Audible. So it naturally cost a little bit more than when I bought Old Curiosity Shop for $1.99. Because that one was just because my copy of the book that I got off Thrift Books was, I think it was Thrift Books, unless I got it from the post office. One of those. Which, I mean, that's a risk of used book shopping sometimes, every so often. So far, that's the only time it's ever happened to me. So, don't, and it's probably my own fault for picking the wrong one or something. But the book was falling out of its binding, so I ended up throwing it away because I'm not going to go pass it on to someone else. I mean, that wouldn't be right. But I ended up buying an audiobook because it was really hard to read it and I was already just about it. So, but I still wanted to finish it because there were some characters I liked. There was a lot of some secondary characters I really liked, and I liked the antagonists. And I wanted to see how things would turn out and everything for the characters. So, and some people's reaction to a certain character's, what happens to a certain character, I was very interested. Although I think that scene, I totally missed that scene when listening to it because I had, and it was cheap, so it was $1.99, so I got it, just to get a cheap, just so I can hear the rest of the story without having to deal with the pages falling out. That, and then while you have the David Copperfield narrated by Richard Armitage, is 22 something, I think. It's a bit much. So, I'm still debating about getting it, and I'm trying to stick to a budget for every month when it comes to buying books. And I already spent a little bit too much today, which I did not realize, I didn't think about. Long story short, I want to continue with audiobooks, as well. So I have an e-audiobooks, and then I have the Libby app. And the problem with my Libby app is that my library does not, the library is here, the library here, the one I use, I don't have two library guides, I just have the one. So, this library is small. It's in walking distance, and it's not bad, but it does not have the biggest selection. It's not necessarily ideal. So I'm limited. So people, you can say, oh, go to the library and everything, but this library is small, and then the other one, I have to drive to it, and so that means I have to, rely on public transport. And public transport here is not that great right now because people don't want to work, and and then my parents. So it's like I can check out the library in the town over might be better and bigger, but I can't go there on a regular basis. And I don't even know, it might not even be better. It might be smaller. I don't know, but it's not like I can go there. This one is within walking distance. It's just small and does not have the biggest selection. The same thing with the roast office, the bookshop where I go to. Although the good thing about the bookshop is it does allow me to try different types of books. You know, books I normally wouldn't get that aren't just fantasy. So with Libby app, it doesn't always have everything that I want to get. Sometimes it doesn't have a book that I pick. Like it doesn't have the best classic selection. And sometimes I want to get the ones with the celebrity person reading it. I mean, celebrity isn't someone that I actually like an actor that I like or something. So I'm still more into reading the physical copies, but I do want to get more into audiobooks. Now on to more specific things. So I have a handful of favorite genres that makes up my personal library. A lot of fantasy, I'm getting more into horror, and I want to expand my horror horizons, not just read Stephen King. I starting with his son, Joe Hill. I think his other son also writes books as well. I don't know if he writes horror, but, so I might try that. I would be curious to see if his other son, Owen, writes like him as well. I mean, I guess I can kind of find out. I can see for sure in Sleeping Beauties, although it might be hard to tell because, you know, if you have a good partnership, then your writing styles blend together, so you might not be able to tell if he has a different writing style or not than his father. Joe reminds me of his dad, or at least his book, Nosferatu reminds me. Although I did read, the heart-shaped box, and from what I vaguely recall, it did seem similar to his dad, and I should try that one again. But anyway, and he also looks like his dad. I think I've shown you guys the picture on the back of my copy of Nosferatu. He looks like his dad. So I did, I have that, and then I got Darcy Coates, which The Haunting of Ashburn House, and then I think, was it last month? Or was it back in, it was in November. In the beginning of November, I think I read, The Ghost Tree by, Christina Henry. And I don't know if it was this year. I don't know if it was this year or 2 years ago when I read Paul Tremblay's, what is it? The woman, the family living in the cabin, and this group of people approaches them and are like, the world is gonna end and you have to sacrifice someone. Which, oh my god, imagine that, imagine you're being in that situation and having to make that decision, and then it's like, or you think it's totally crazy and you don't believe it, and then having to, but these people won't leave you alone until you do. Like, you see, is there a way to get out of that situation or not? I mean, imagine being in that situation, trying to figure out a way to get out of it. But then there's a small, tiny voice in your head that might say, what if they're right? What if they're not crazy? What if this really is going on? My rational brain tells me, no, this is impossible. And that I should try to find a way to get out of the situation without having to escape them and everything. But then, what if they're right? There's a small chance that they're right. Which Stephen King, I think, does a really good, thing about the slow possibility of being that people, the more terrified they are, the more willing they're to believe that what if the supposed crazy person is right? That's what I just read The Mist, one of his novellas, and it's like, they're in a situation now. It's made quite clear that they are right in that one. While in Cabin at the End of the World, that's what it's called, Cabin at the End of the World, you don't know for sure if they're right. I mean, yeah, they do show them stuff on TV, and that's kind of hard to fake. I think, I don't know if it's possible at all, but yeah, it might, it's kind of hard, at least I think it is, to fake that. And I read that, and I got The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And I think that's supposed to be horror. I wasn't 100% sure on that one. I think it is. And of course, there's Dracula, Frankenstein, the classic horror stuff. And then The Haunting of Hill House. So I'm slowly expanding my horror horizons. So I want to read at least one or two horrors, depending on the length, a month. And going back to Stephen King, I want to read a Stephen King every month or every 2 months. It depends. Like he has some short books like Misery and The Gunslinger, which I just bought a copy of, a better copy than the mass market. Where it's a little bit shorter. And then, of course, there's some of his novellas and short stories, like I was able to read 2 from Skeleton Crew, The Mist. I finished it a couple days ago. And then I also, right after I read The Mist, I figured, because I saw that it didn't have as many pages between the first page of the next story, Here There Be Tigers, and then the next one, which I think is the one that's called Monkeys, or The Monkeys. I'm having trouble saying that word. So it will depend on the length of the story. If it's a short story novella, that will depend on how many Stephen Kings I read, of course. And I still would like to read Secret Window, Secret Garden, but as I've said before, my problem with that one is I've seen the movie enough times, and it's like it doesn't, it's a short story or novella, so it's like pretty close. I mean, the movie adaptation so far seems pretty accurate to the story. And even if it is different, part of me is like, I've already read it, I know the plot, and it's, it's not as, and then there's the other story in that one, The Longlers, that I want to reread, that I read years ago, and I did see the miniseries for that one. It's the same, it has, I don't remember the guy's name, but the guy from, he was, if you ever seen the show Step by Step, he was, the mom's hair partner. He was Bronson Pinchot, I think. He's in it. He plays the one annoying character, the squeaky wheel character, and then actually one of the Secret Garden adaptation with Maggie Smith as Miss Deadlock. Medlock. Deadlock is from Bleak House. Medlock. It's the one who plays Mary Lennox. The actress who plays Mary Lennox is in the Longlers adaptation. She's the blind girl. And I don't know if there's anyone else you recognize. If anyone else recognizable. I mean, Grant, you guys might recognize them. It's kind of cheesy. The CGI of the monsters is not great. You can tell it's very dated, and it feels very much like, and it's gross. It kind of reminds me of my first thought, and Nostalgia Critic also said this, and I did not watch his review of it until recently, until a couple months ago. But back whenever I describe it to people, I think of Pac-Man. They look like Pac-Man. I used to think, although I added they were fuzzy Pac-Man, but no, I think they don't look fuzzy. They just look kind of blurry and stuff, like blobs, Pac-Man blobs. So it's kind of funny that Nostalgia Critic basically described them as Pac-Man as well. But yeah, that one I want to reread as well. And that's in the 4 Past Midnight collection. So that's 4 stories. So I've read at least 3 of them. One of them I want to reread, and then the other one I want to read it, but then it's like hard for me to be motivated to read it because I've seen the movie adaptation. And it's not that long, so it's probably not that different. The adaptation is probably not that different from the story because it's not that. It's a simple story. It's, there will still probably be things that they changed, like the title, for instance, of them. But, it's not, I don't see any reason why there's anything that they need to change in that one. So yeah, I don't know if I'll ever read it or not. But so yes, I want to reread a Stephen King every month or every 2 months. I want to read a horror every month or every 2 months. Basically, a lot of the books I want to read, most of the genres I want to read, like the books are going to be a bit long. A lot of them will be very dense. But yeah, so I also want to read one historical every month as well. Because I have a few of those, and I'm getting back into that as well. And now some of those could potentially not. Well, yeah, basically every genre I read, books can be either long or short. So it will depend on the book length if it takes me a month or longer to read it. And then the same thing with fantasy. I want to read a fantasy every month. And to go along with fantasy, since fantasy is one of those genres that a lot of times there's always it always is part of a series. I mean, there are some standalone fantasies, but, it seems like every time I think it's a standalone, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait, there's another book to read. It has a sequel. It has a trilogy. It's a trilogy. It's a saga. It's a series, It's kind of annoying because it's like you're all accepting that it's not that long. Now, there's some books that, I'm cool with them being series, or I want them to be series. But sometimes it is a minor annoyance when I find out, I'm all like, oh yes, good, it's a one standalone, so I don't have to read any more books or feel the need to buy any more books, even if I enjoyed this one a lot. And then I find out there's another book coming, which is great, but it's also kind of like, I thought this was a standalone. I was all prepared to not have to worry about buying any more books, and then you throw in another one. That's why it's annoying whenever an author finishes a series and then all of a sudden, okay, I'm not done with it yet. I want to write more books, which that's great for the author, and that's great for hardcore fans. But if you're someone who, like me, who liked it but wasn't a hardcore fan, but still wanted to, finish it out, and then all of a sudden the author years later writes another book, it's like, now you do that, now you write another book. It's the same feeling I get when I stop liking a show, and then I find out something that I wanted them to do in the show, they actually do it years later when I'm no longer interested in the show. And I'm talking about Once Upon a Time right now. I'm thinking about that. I had wanted them to do a musical episode for a while, but then I stopped after season 3, and then season 6, there's a musical episode. They decided to do a musical episode, and it's like, now you do it? Really? And I actually watched someone do a review of it, where they watched bits and pieces of it. Now, I was more familiar with the characters than she was. I mean, because I had gone on to season 3, and being part of it, and of course, I still had my community of friends on Facebook that still either still enjoyed the show, or still talked about the show, even if they didn't enjoy it anymore. So I was still kind of familiar with. I had more knowledge than the reviewer did, I think, and um, so I was aware of characters and character relationships better and all that kind of stuff, and who people were. Although it provided some funny commentary from her, um, but I watched it. It was so weird to watch it because, like I said, I knew the characters and I kind of had a better idea of the character relationships. I still didn't entirely know what was going on. I was just as clueless in that department as she was. And it was weird watching it. Even, like, I didn't watch the whole thing, obviously, but she played bits and pieces, for copyright purposes. They, when someone does that and they they only play clips or certain parts so they won't, the video won't get taken down. And it was just weird watching it. It just felt like, how when you go through a soundtrack and you listen only to your favorite songs, or maybe that's just something I do, but it was like, but it was very weird here, like, because, like I said, I didn't have exactly any idea, but I had enough more information, like I said, than the reviewer did. Like, I knew the Black Fairy was Rumpelstiltskin's father. Spoiler alert! If you are just getting into the show, and I knew that Emma and Hook were officially together, and they get married. I knew that, unfortunately. I knew that Emma and Regina had now become friends. And I didn't know that Zelena was now a good guy. I did not know that. That kind of was like, did you all just forget did you forget all the stuff she did? Did you, have your memory erased at that part? And of course I knew the curse formula that there, to me it's like, it's basically a formula for that show. Like every season there's a curse and then they all forget. Now, they did try to be a little more creative in the episode since it was a musical, did allow, the writers to be more creative, give a more creative reason, a more creative curse. It wasn't like they had their memory erased. It was actually, they are cursed to break out into song. Or, well, although there was a curse coming that the Black Fairy was warning them that she was going to cast. And of course, Hook blamed, and of course, I knew about the whole Rumple flip-flopping with his character being flip-flopped from bad guy to good guy, bad guy, good guy. It's like, just make up your minds. Stop. If you want him to be bad guy, why'd you make him good in the first place? That just really, that frustrated me, because, because those of us who were fans of that character, it's like, you make him seem like, yeah, everyone loves a bad boy, but, like, it's just, it was not just him being, a troublemaker. It drove me nuts. So, long story short, it was weird, but it was kind of funny watching her review of it and talking about it. But yeah, so, like I said, it kind of, I'm trying to think of why I brought that up. I cannot remember. Oh yeah, I remember. It was because I was comparing it to the feeling of when an author continues the series years later. So, like, it's the same kind of feeling I get whenever I stop watching the show and then all of a sudden I find out that the show is doing something that I actually like. It's the same kind of feeling. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that when an author all of a sudden will continue a series after some time of, like, there's some situations where I want them to continue, and I now understand that it might take a while. Like, I would love for Stephanie Garber to continue the Caraval series and write more books in that world. And I feel like in her most recent release, the one that just came out, I know that supposedly it has nothing to do with Caraval, but it's the Prince of Hearts, and he's kind of the antagonist. He's one of the antagonists in Caraval trilogy. So it's like, really? It has nothing to do with that? Is he a completely different character? Which that's what I was kind of hoping for. I remember I did a video, on a tag video, and I remember bringing that up in the tag video that I would love for characters like the Prince of Hearts to get more of a backstory, to find out more about him in a complete novel. So I don't know if this. So this so far, going by the description, I haven't picked up the book because I'm probably gonna wait for it to come out in paperback. But it made me think. Is this the backstory of that character? But yeah. So long story. So that brings me to the point of with my series. I don't want my series to be put on the back burner. So I want to read a book from a series every month, or try to. It's so easy to make these plans, but for the follow through, I'm not very good at that. So I'm gonna try though. It's very hard because if it really might help if I just wait before I pick my TBRs. It's just very hard because I have so many, so when I send those videos might be pointless because that might completely change. I don't know. Maybe I should just stick to it because I made the videos and put them out there. So maybe I should stick to what I have. At least read some of the books that I've talked about in those two videos. But yeah, I want to read, so every month or every 2 months, I want to read a book from a series, one of my series, and then the same fantasy. So basically, every month I want to read one book from every category. That also includes classics. Of course, classics is not a genre, but it's just, I feels like a separate thing because they are older books and the writing was very different. Unless you're talking modern classics, which modern classics are a little closer to today's novels with the writing. And I get the whole complaint about how I know that a lot of people don't like when there's a separateness between classics. Like there is an intimidating factor, and there's we put classics on a pedestal almost. Like calling them classics feels like that does that. And it feels like, oh, you have to read these books. Now, I've not read there are classics I don't like, and I haven't read or reread. Like, I'm not interested in Mark Twain. I can think of other authors that I'm not into. That are classics. That are considered classics. I can't think of any, but yeah, it does put a sense of pressure, the fact that we put these books on a pedestal thing, you have to read these books because they're classics. And then, and also there's some books that we study in school that I'm probably not going to reread. Like Mark Twain's books. I am not interested in rereading any of his books or any of his work. I'm sure he's a great writer. He's a good writer and everything, but I'm just not interested about. Now, one day I will pass those. I hope the boys, my nephews, will get into those books. Mark Twain. I hope they'll like them. I don't know, but it will be, of course, depend on what they're interested in. And who knows if the younger boy will be into reading as much as his older brother seems to be. I just hope they're not those kids that they read a lot in school and then get tired of it, and don't read after they're done with school. Because I feel like school can potentially ruin reading for people. Let's see. Okay, so I already talked about that. And then I also want to read, the last thing is I want to continue to read more nonfiction. I'm slowly reading nonfiction. No, this isn't the last thing, actually. I want to say one more thing about classics, but, I want to read more nonfiction books. I am reading some, but not a lot. Nonfiction, I know I'm not obligated to, but I like memoirs, and I found those very interesting, and I think it depends on the subject matter. I mean, people don't just read random nonfiction books. It's just like with genre fic. It's just like any other. It's just like with fiction. It's all about deciding what you like, what you want to read. I think that's how it is with nonfiction. It's what do you want to read about? What do you want to learn about in this case? And so far, I kind of like learning about old Hollywood and everything, and learning about certain periods in history. I really think that's really it. And I would love to read more books about autism. That would be interesting. Not just going on the internet, but actually reading books about people's personal experience with autism. I have been meaning to read Malala. I still haven't picked it up yet. Maybe someday. And then there's I've quite a few over here. Like I have the ones I haven't read are Anastasia, an Encyclopedia of Tolkien, which I just got earlier this year. And then there's classical literature, which that's more like an anthology. Everybody Was Fine. It's a memoir. The Seven Pillars of Wisdom, another memoir. The Letters from John and Abigail Adams. Wild Swans, that's the one I was leading to. Then, I don't know if I want to keep going with that one. I'm interested, but it's not, I'm not hardcore interested in that one. My friend Terry would be interested in that, I think. She'd be more interested in that than I would. But I might put that downstairs. In our library in the den, but I don't know if there's any room for it. I mean, there's probably more room for it than on here. But then, it's one of these things where I'm like, I'm not interested, but then I look at it, it's like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe I am still interested, I just gotta think for the right moment. But then I think, I have to be tough about that. Tough love. And then letters of Jane Austen, Edith, what is her name? Edith Hamilton mythology, Stephen King's Dance Macabre, his other nonfiction. I've also listened to his memoir on the craft of writing. I listened to that one. That one's kind of cool and fun. Even if you're not a Stephen King fan, I think he knows a lot and understands a lot about the craft of writing. I think you should at least try that book, even if you're not a Stephen King fan. Because it's nonfiction, so it's not like horror, or supernatural, or fantastical or whatever. I think that's all my nonfiction. I don't have a lot, but and then the one I've had the longest since, or at least since I moved here, is the Walt Disney, The Triumph of the American Imagination, which I'm currently reading on and off, about Walt Disney. It's by Neil Gabler. If you're interested in Walt Disney, then check that one out. It's Walt Disney, The Triumph and the American Imagination by Neil Gabler. That's a great, so far I'm really liking that one. And, if you're, like I said, I think you gotta be a fan of Disney to like that. To really appreciate it. And I think that's it. That's all and then I have my friend's book, Back to the Battlefield, A Christian Woman's Journey to, what is it? A Christian Woman's Guide to Enduring Life. I also have that one, as well, so, and I was very proud of my friend, just like I was proud. Sorry, that for a second, I put her book on top of the other nonfiction books, and I was worried for a second it was gonna fall behind my bookshelves, and I might have been able to grab it, but Um, yeah, I was very proud of my friend for publishing that. I just took me a while to buy it because like I said, it's nonfiction, so. But I should have bought it a lot sooner than I did. I just hadn't got around to it yet. So I was very proud of my friend, just like I'm proud of my dad for his book, Shadows of Saigon. So in case you're a historical fiction fan and you are interested in a book about the Vietnam War, it's about a man that it starts out when he's an old man and he has a heart condition, and while he's having amnesia, he recalls from high school days to his time in the war when he met the love of his life, a Vietnamese girl. It's very, and it's not too, it's not graphic, it's a really sweet story. So some fun, I decided to go, so I'm doing another plug here for my dad's work. Shadows of Saigon, you can find on Amazon and Barnes & Noble website. It is by, my dad's name is Mark R. Anderson. So in case you're interested in historical fiction with a little bit of romance and a little bit of a coming of age story. So I just wanted to do a plug for my dad to, push that. But anyway, so yeah, nonfiction, and I want to continue to read more nonfiction. So and then Anastasia is the other one. Did I mention Anastasia? I don't think I mentioned Anastasia. I have that biography as well. And like everybody else, my only knowledge of Anastasia, unless I've already, is the Fox/Disney animated feature film. That was my first knowledge of her, of the Lost Russian Princess. So I want to read that one at some point. But that's also a chunk of a book. And so it's a hardback. So it's not as travel easy. But anyway, so also the other thing I wanted to say about classics for this year is that I want to make it a priority to each month read each of the authors that I like especially if they've written a lot of books. Like Dickens, he's written quite a lot. He's written 15 novels. One of them being Edwin Drood, which is not finished yet, which he never got a chance to finish, and I think no one's finished it for him, I don't think. And then there are quite a few speculations out there for Edwin Drood. Like Doctor Who even did, in its return, that first season when the show returned to TV, for the first time in 10-20 years, they did an episode with the Ninth Doctor and Rose Tyler, where they're dealing with ghosts in London and during Dickens' time, and he gets an idea for a science fiction version of the story, of how the story turns out. Too bad that didn't happen though. I mean, it would have been really cool if it did. If he did. I mean, there were, and it's not like there weren't science fiction writers out there. I mean, there was H.G. Wells, and I think, so he could have done it. He could have written like that. Who knows? But anyway, so yeah, so Dickens, the Bronte sisters, although really it's just Charlotte Bronte's done a lot, and while the other Brontes, they have a lot of poetry, like Emily and Anne. Like Anne has 2 novels, Emily only has 1 novel, and the rest is poetry. So I would like to try to find a collection of their poetry as well. And I would love to get the and I'm kind of interested in the graphic novel of the Glass. I think it's called The Glass House or Glass Town. It might be that. I think it's that. Sorry, there's some gnat or flying around here that's like right in my face. And then there's still like 2 more Jane Austen other than her Juvenilia, which I like to get. I would like to get that at some point. But there's Lainey Susan, which is her epistolary novel, and that's another one where I read the I've seen the movie adaptation of it starring Kate Beckinsale. Now, granted, this might be different than, because it's an epistolary novel, so it's written in letters, while the movie just filled in the blanks. I feel like I haven't read it, but I'm assuming that's the intention of the movie, that it kind of filled in some of the blanks. And so that might not be the same as the whole Secret Garden, Secret Window situation. So I still Lainey Susan, and then Northanger Abbey, which that was an option for coming up in those videos about my winter TBR. But that, I don't know though. I put that one back on the shelf for now. So, but I might get to that one. I might read that one soon. Either way, I want to read that soon. And I don't know if I want to read it before I do my reread of like Mansfield Park, which that's gonna be this year. I'm gonna do a reread of Mansfield Park for 2022. And then there's Trollope. He has a lot of books as well. I think he has more than Dickens does actually. But to be fair, he has a series. He has 2 series. So it makes sense that he has more books. But yeah, so and by the way, the fantasy category also includes some sci-fi. If I start to get more into sci-fi, like I have Sky Without Stars, which is a trilogy, I think. And then I went ahead and bought Dune again, which I had a mass market copy of it from the roast office. And then I ended up getting rid of it because when I first picked it up and started to read it, I just was like, I'm not interested. But I decided to jump back on the bandwagon and try it again. So I got the first one. So, and that's another series. Another book that has part of a series. So, it's a challenge because of so many series and a lot of really long ones as well. Like any of the fantasy sci-fi series are pretty long. Like now what is nice is when authors will like write their series, they'll write a trilogy or a saga or whatever, or a duology, and then they'll write another one after that that's kind of separate but still part of the overarching plot, like Robin Hobb, which that's another series that I need to pick up, continue with the book, The Ship of Magic. I gotta read that one before I can get into any of her other series. She's an author because she's older. It's harder for me to get access to the regular size paperbacks from her books. What I really want to do though is get the UK versions, but that problem then is those are Book Depository, and I think I'm better luck getting them on there. I think. Well, that's not a problem per se, but what the real problem is that when I try to get them, I try not to. It's not like I shop every day on there, but by the time I get back on, but when I do get back on there, all of a sudden it will be gone. So, sometimes I feel like I have to jump on and grab the book right away, especially if I want a certain version of the book, and not just the cheap one that's cheap and easy to carry around, like in other words, a mass market, or a hardback that's uncomfortable for me to read at times. But yeah, so series is one of the many things I need to work on. So those are my reading goals for 2022. So I'm interested to know what your reading goals are. If you have any, if you don't have any, And like, just tell me, do you have any plans for next year? Or if you don't, that's fine, is there any authors you want to focus on, or any types of books you want to focus more on? Just go crazy on the comment section below. Anyway, so I hope you guys like this video. And I hope you are enjoying your reading and staying healthy. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye.